Ruler School is brought to you by Happy Little Hug Factory and these amazing patrons. Extra special thank you to guest lecturer patrons Brody Harris and Lance Albertson. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the video.
Hey there guys, DMO73 here, bringing you the deck profile for the Red-Black Isis list that I played earlier this week. It was designed by Frank Closser, and it's kind of a mid-range control take on Isis rather than like a really aggressive style. I would argue that like the end of the play style of the deck is the early game is about sticking the discard spells or Ray or things like that over the aggression when you use kind of control your opponent's hand, and then you use the runes to kind of back up those like plays, so you have something to kind of answer your opponent's plays that do get through the discard, and then you finish them off with like a whirl. You're hitting them with damage, you're hitting them with blazers and zeros and stuff like that, and then you have like Welser to make your burn damage kind of multiply, and then you kind of can always have this option of like finishing the game off with a whirlwind conflagration. So obviously Isis under front is a Divinity 10, Judgments for 4, Energizes for red, and then flips over into the 100 Weapon Master, this 14/8 with First Strike, who can give herself precision and barrier and also burn stuff to be able to do some combat tricks too. Ultimately, this deck doesn't use it's kind of the weirdness of this deck is that like it doesn't use Isis's backside very often, but it is definitely an option you have, especially when you're trying to push that last little bit of damage in terms of being able to do those combat tricks with her burn. I think that's a really, really effective piece of what Isis is able to do. Going into the stones, we have 4 normal magic stones, 4 stone from the Dark Castle, and 2 magic stone of dueling. So the magic stone of dueling, really great because it is 1 stone is 2 activations of Isis, which is awesome. Stone from the Dark Castle we use to get those mystery counters for Glint of Insights or Blood Sprays. And then the 4 no magic stones is because we primarily want our early game to be black, but we still want access to red. If I was going to change anything about this deck, I would probably go down to 3 no magic stones and up to 3 magic stones of dueling. I was noticing that I was kind of having to burn myself a little more than I was wanting, and I wasn't really ever needing like starved for Darkness Will. So I think that you could easily do 3 no magic stone and up to 3 magic stone of dueling just to balance it out so you're not having to hurt yourself as much. The deck really does have a lot of darkness in it, and because most of your stuff is only 1 and then jumps up to 3 darkness, you don't really necessarily need to worry about having pure darkness the whole time, so not burning yourself as much is not would be probably a pretty good deal. Going into the main deck, we play 4 Ray the Black Owl. Super solid card, provides protection. The only weirdness becomes that you can't, if it does flip over into 0, you can't use Whirlwind Conflagration to target yourself, your own creatures. Main reason because then the entire thing will get canceled by 0, and you don't want that to happen, so you just gotta be careful there. For Freyla, Servant of Demon Fire, it's a super solid 2-drop for swiftness, can give other things swiftness, which is really awesome when you have like a Blazer. So like you have the Freyla out, you play the Blazer Legendary Thief, you take a peek at their hand, remove something, Freyla will swing, pump up Blazer, and then Blazer has precision and can go kill something with that extra damage pump. So it'll be a 12/12. Or 12/8 and be able to kill something pretty effectively. Sure, you'll lose the Blazer at the end of turn, but it is an option if you want to try to remove something that's a heavy hitter. 3 Howell Pig Squadron, not super sold on this card, but it is a solid 3-drop Swiftness Resonator. Since we're not running Howell Pig, you don't get nearly as much value out of it. It's just for that swiftness. I feel like I could probably change this with something else. Not exactly sure what that is, but this card, when I was playing the deck, just didn't quite feel like it was there for me. Maybe I would play some different removal spells instead to kind of justify the control package a little bit more. Same with Disgraced Knight. I never really cast this guy, but it is this kind of repeatable threat, and you do have a lot of darkness cards to be able to use. I'm just not entirely sure if we have enough to justify playing him with he's a triple darkness threat. I think that there are some other things that you could potentially play that might be a little bit better suited for this position. Something like an Azazel. I think Azazel actually would fit really nicely in this deck. It'd be more expensive, sure, but Azazel also forms as a sort of removal, while also putting a flying body on board. And I think it does its job a little bit better than Disgrace Knight, and it's also not nearly as intense in terms of Darkness Will cost. For Blazer, obviously going to be stealing those cards out of your opponent's hand, super great, and then can kind of control the battlefield from there. Belial, so you have access to some board wipes, as well as being able to have that kind of pseudo burn in the form of every time something goes to grave, your opponent's going to take some damage. Welsser, the Archmage of Fire, you only play 2 of him, I apologize. This is great, you can use it to, double cast Look of Corruption, double cast Gifts of Insight, double cast Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm, heck, you can even double cast a Sandstorm because it's a chant rune. You can get a lot of value out of him, especially if you do manage to hard cast him if the game goes that long, because you have a lot of chants that are really awesome if you can start duplicating them. Look of Corruption and Glint of Insight, 4 and 3 respectively, because it's a really awesome control package in terms of being able to rip your opponent's hands to shreds. Heaven Sundering Dragon Palm for some spot removal, as well as some additional burn. 4 Scalding Breath, because 7 damage to your opponent's face for only 2 will, and it can't be cancelled by Fair Spell, is awesome for being able to close out games. 2 Null Darkness for some hard removal, and then 2 Blood Spray for some draw power, as well as potential removal if you hit those mystery counters. So there you guys have it. Like I said, if I was going to change anything, probably Howell, Pig Squadron, and Disgrace Knight get pulled for things like maybe Life Severing Blade, Azazel, something else to kind of better fit the control mid-range style of the deck as opposed to being aggro. Disgrace Knight just felt like I was never really getting to a point where I could consistently cast him, and Howell, Pig Squadron is like just a kind of essentially a vanilla 8/8 with swiftness, which I'm not super happy with in this deck. Overall, this has probably been one of my favorite ISIS lists to play. I am more of a control player at heart, and I will attest that I am terrible when it comes to just playing actual burn decks, but this deck felt like a lot of fun. It felt comfortable, it felt good. So I definitely recommend, if you're an ISIS player and you're not quite sure what to do with her, that maybe you try this out and see what you think. But thanks to Frank Closser. Oh, let's go talk about the runes real quick, sorry. It's Sandstorm, Poison Stinger, which works really nicely to be able to duplicate those damages because it doubles all the rune damage. Now keep in mind that it goes 200 damage and then the double damage kicks into effect. Whirlwind Conflagration, which is awesome for the board wipe as well as finishing things off. Explosion, which is an excellent early game rune to be able to keep yourself safe when you're discarding your opponent's hand. And then Giant Sandstorm, so you have a board wipe. So you're sitting on like 8 damage, 10 damage, potentially to do a board wipe if you need to, and then it could be even more with Poison Stinger. So thank you guys to Frank Closser for giving the list and kind of walking me through it a little bit. Tons of fun to play. Definitely recommend checking it out. Let me know what you guys think of the list, or if you would do something different in the comment sections down below. And until next time, this is DMO73 signing off.